Germany, the so-called economic engine of Europe, is sputtering. The latest numbers are out, and they are bad. Not just bad, catastrophic. Germany's economy isn't just slowing, it's contracting. And this contraction isn't a one-off blip, it's part of a much bigger, downward spiral that could reshape the future of Europe itself. So, what's happening inside Germany? Why is Europe's largest economy shrinking when it should be powering the continent forward? And how does this connect to the growing militarization of Europe and the potential for war in Ukraine? Let's break this down. The German Federal Statistical Office just confirmed the grim reality. In the second quarter of this year, Germany's GDP fell by 0.3% compared to the previous quarter. That's 3 times worse than the initial forecast of only 0.1%. This may sound small, but in economic terms, those decimals are devastating. They mark the difference between a country that is stable and one that is slipping into decline. Why? The culprit is weak industrial production. Germany has long been the industrial backbone of Europe, producing cars, machinery, chemicals, and engineering marvels that power the EU. But now, that backbone is cracking. In June alone, industrial production fell by nearly 2%. The production index dropped to its lowest point since May 2020, the middle of the pandemic lockdowns. And according to the Bundesbank, the outlook isn't improving. The central bank says Germany will see zero growth this quarter. No rebound, no recovery, just stagnation. And here's the part that should make every German furious. The earlier economic data was wrong. Revised numbers now show that Germany actually performed much worse in both 2023 and 2024 than the government admitted at first. GDP in 2023 didn't shrink by 0.3%. It shrank by 0.9%. Triple the estimate. This year so far, instead of slight growth, Germany is already down 0.5%. So ask yourself, was this just a mistake in reporting? Or was it an attempt to downplay the crisis until it became impossible to hide? Either way, the reality is clear. Germany is in a recession. Not the technical kind economists love to debate, a real one that affects people's lives, jobs, and futures. At the same time, Germany's government deficit has ballooned. In 2024, it hit 116 billion euros. The deficit to GDP ratio is now 2.7%, with national debt climbing to over 62% of GDP. Now yes, this is technically still within the EU's official limits. But Germany, the country that once lectured Greece, Italy, and Spain about fiscal discipline, is suddenly walking dangerously close to the red line itself. And here's the kicker. This isn't temporary. This isn't just a COVID recovery hangover. These are structural problems. 3/4 of Germany's lost export market share is due to a collapse in competitiveness. 1/4 of German companies admit they can't compete outside the EU anymore. Even within Europe, 1 in 8 firms say they are falling behind. So, when politicians tell you this is just a temporary downturn, remember, this is not about cycles. This is about Germany losing its edge. Now here's where the story gets even darker. Because while the German economy is shrinking, Germany's political elite is pushing the country deeper into militarization. Germany is supposed to be Europe's great stabilizer, but instead, Chancellor Friedrich Merz and his coalition are talking about sending troops east, into Lithuania, and possibly Ukraine. Let's pause. Ukraine is already one of the most dangerous flashpoints in the world. Russia has said repeatedly, if NATO or European troops enter Ukraine under the label of peacekeepers, it will treat that as a military intervention. In other words, escalation. Yet Germany is pressing forward. Here's the absurd part. Germany doesn't even have the capacity to back up this rhetoric. The German army has just 182,000 soldiers. That's not much for a country being asked to stand toe-to-toe with Russia. Yes, Germany announced it would permanently deploy 5,000 troops to Lithuania, but as of now, only 150 soldiers are actually there. The rest aren't expected until 2027. Even Germany's foreign minister admitted, doing that and also stationing troops in Ukraine would probably be too much for us. Think about that contradiction. Germany is broke, its industry is collapsing, it can't even recruit enough soldiers, but it's still pushing for more confrontation with Russia. Politico recently reported that Germany has struggled to grow its military despite massive spending. Recruitment has flatlined at around 182,000 soldiers for years. Why? Because young Germans aren't signing up. And those who do, often leave. Training bottlenecks, poor pay, outdated equipment, the problems go on and on. And yet, in April, Germany celebrated its historic deployment of troops abroad, a 5,000-strong armored brigade in Lithuania, the the first permanent foreign deployment since World War II. This isn't about defense, this is about provocation. Inside Germany, not everyone is buying into this strategy. Opposition parties, from the right-wing AfD to the left-wing Die Linke, are both opposing troop deployments to Ukraine. It's rare for such polar opposites to agree, but here, they see the same truth. Germany can't afford this. Even Chancellor Merz himself is hedging. He says it's too early to commit and that the parliament needs to debate it. Translation: he knows the country isn't ready, and while the politicians argue, it's ordinary Germans who suffer. Stagnant public services, falling wages, higher taxes, rising energy costs, private consumption, the backbone of any modern economy, is shrinking. Ordinary families are cutting back, delaying purchases, struggling to pay bills. And all the while, their leaders are writing checks for military expansion that Germany simply cannot afford. So let's zoom out. Europe is gearing up for escalation in Ukraine. The EU wants to show strength against Russia, but its largest economy is in freefall. What happens when the so-called engine of Europe breaks down? What happens when the country supposed to bankroll the EU can't even keep its factories running, let alone its military commitments? This isn't just a German problem, it's a European problem. If Germany collapses, Europe collapses. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Germany's leaders are living in denial. They are acting as if the country can have it both ways, fund massive military projects and maintain economic stability. But the numbers don't lie. Industrial decline, budget deficits, shrinking competitiveness, and overstretched military. Germany isn't rising to the challenge, it's drowning in it. And the consequences won't stop at Germany's borders. The choices Berlin makes now will shape the future of Europe, and maybe even the future of war and peace on the continent. So, what do you think? Is Germany heading for an economic collapse that will drag all of Europe with it? Or can it somehow turn things around before it's too late? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you found this breakdown helpful and eye-opening, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next analysis. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp, stay curious. I'll see you in the next one.